Morning. It's Saturday, February 5th, 2020, and this is IndigPatriot News. So, I'm not going to go too much in depth into this article. It's a center 50, right 50. I'm gonna go into USA Today, but generally there are memes that are going across Facebook claiming that mail-in ballots and absentee ballots are different because uh, absentee ballots require proof of identity and mail in doesn't. I'm not entirely sure where they would get this from other than propaganda from certain outside influences. But it propagates on sites like Facebook and it gets retweeted and people don't check the accuracy of those statements. They just go with it because I guess because it fits whatever narrative they want to believe in. Um, Donald Trump himself has been banging that drum time and time again, talking about how mail in ballots would be the end of our democracy. Um, when the state of Pennsylvania heard about that, a judge ordered him to come up with proof, like put up or shut up. And they weren't able to put up the proof, but they haven't shut up yet about it, okay? Because the whole purpose of it is to disenfranchise voters. You have individuals who can't make it to the polls, okay? You have individuals that maybe they live further away and they don't have the transportation. Maybe they are at risk to catching a particularly destructive case of COVID because their immune systems are compromised or whatever. I've spoken on this time and time again. The disenfranchisement makes it so that people can't vote, and we should be doing just the opposite of that. We should make it easier for people to apply their right to participate in our democracy. This is 2020. We have methods to detect counterfeit money. We have methods to detect counterfeit IDs. But we're going to claim that we can't detect counterfeit absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. That's ridiculous. We aren't living in the 1920s where we don't have computer technology, where we don't have the world's best and brightest working on these kinds of things. Okay, it's propaganda and it needs to end. We need to stop listening to the memes and start fact checking them. If it says Turning Point USA on it, I usually take those with a grain of salt. Shots fired. Speaking of, so two self-proclaimed Boogaloo Boys are charged with attempting to support Hamas. First thing we'll do is talk about the Boogaloos. Not Roger Stone. So Boogaloo is a movement of accelerationists. Okay, so what they want is for a second civil war because they believe that the government has too much interference in their lives. They don't believe in police force. They want to do whatever they want, and and they have their assault rifles to make their points for them, I suppose. They're identifiable because a lot of times they like to wear these Hawaiian shirts with their body armor. Okay, and obviously they enjoy toting those AR-15s and other assault rifles and handguns and equipment. Okay, Hamas is a group of anti-Israel. They're an anti-Semitic terrorist group that has caused deaths throughout the world towards pro Israel groups. Okay, so I have an ear infection. So I'm going to go with USA Today. two Boogaloo guys not wearing their Hawaiian shirts. So maybe they've moved away from the Hawaiian shirts since that's become an obvious identifying feature. And you see that a lot with some of the one percenter motorcycle gangs, for lack of a better way of putting it. Instead of wearing their colors out in public, which are the vests with their patches and the identifying the rockers on the back, they started wearing soft colors, which are like T-shirts and things like that, that still identify them, but they're not as easily identified. So these two men, Michael Solomon and Benjamin Teeter, they lived with one another for about a month. They came up with a scheme that they were going to contact Hamas and offer their services as mercenaries in order to fund a training camp here in the United States for Boogaloo. Okay. What they ended up not understanding is that they contacted an FBI informant and they got caught. John Demers, chief of the Justice Department's National Security Division, stated, "This case can only be understood as a disturbing example of the old adage, the enemy of your enemy is your friend." Okay. So the investigation began in May during the demonstrations over George Floyd. So just in this year alone, there have been 10 incidences of Boogaloo movement individuals being involved in furthering violence and blaming on other organizations. For instance, a man earlier this year killed two authorities, law enforcement authorities, and his attempt was to blame it on the Black Lives Movement because they want to start that civil war. They're accelerationists. They want to start that civil war, and they're willing to fight on both sides of a conflict. So in subsequent contacts with FBI informant and undercover agents, the suspects also allegedly talked about their ability to manufacture and provide untraceable weapons, including silencers and fully automatic firearms. Okay. Following a meeting in late July, the suspects allegedly delivered a device designed to convert a gun to shoot automatically, which they believed Hamas would use to attack Israeli and U.S. soldiers, according to court documents. So when we discuss the fact that some of these people out here doing the rioting and looting may not be actual protesters, here we have an organization that they do that exact thing. Now, I'm not saying that all of the rioting and looting that happens in the small subsets of these protests, I'm not saying that all of these people are chaos agents that are just there to, blame things on people that aren't doing anything. I'm stating that that is also a factor that we need to take into account. So, Betsy Devos. Betsy Devos is the education secretary. She's also the sister to Eric Prince of Blackwater mercenary group. So, since she's been in her position, she's tried to divert our tax money away from public schools and towards the private sector. It sounds familiar, right? It doesn't it seem like to be something that's been going on in various portions of our government with some of these appointees? Isn't it something that we just learned about from the Joy of the post office, how he's diverting funds to businesses that he himself owns? Look it up. In any case, um, Judge Dabney Friedrich, an appointee of President Donald Trump, ruled that Devos ran afoul of the CARES Act when she required public schools to send a greater share of pandemic assistance to private school students than is typically required under federal law. Okay? So basically, what she wanted to do is she wanted to take this money that's supposed to be going towards at risk students in their schools, and she wanted to put them into the pockets of affluential schools that are already being paid for their services by the parents of the students that are sending their children to these schools. She wanted to take our tax money and place them into places like Christian schools, which, while I'm not against the religion itself, the Christian schools don't pay taxes, and if you don't pay taxes, you don't get any of my taxes. Does that make any sense? If you're not if you're claiming a a 501c or an exception to paying taxes in some manner, then you should not be getting the tax money that's coming out of our pockets to pay for this education. Okay? At issue in the cases is how public school districts must share those billions of dollars in coronavirus relief funding with private schools to provide equitable services such as technology, tutoring, or transportation. Public school officials and groups like the NAACP argued the emergency funding should be sent to private schools under the typical federal formula, which is based on the number of low-income students at private schools. But Davis's rule said that the school districts must allocate money for private school students based on total enrollment, irrespective of the student's income. Okay? The rule also gives public schools a second option, allowing them to only fund low-income students at private schools, but only if the public schools use their own funding exclusively on low-income students in public schools. So we have these schools that are run down in some cases. They don't have the technology that some of these private schools have. They have these students that require extra care in order to make sure that their learning disabilities are addressed. And they want to take what little money that these schools have and dilute it and place an unfair amount of money into already privately funded schools. The judge's decision is final, and somebody needs to take this woman to task. Department of Homeland Security labels white supremacists as the most persistent and lethal threat to the U.S. I agree. This is left 67, center 33. The right doesn't talk about it. So, the Department of Homeland Security is set to label white supremacists as the most serious terror threat facing the United States. In 3 draft reports reviewed by Politico, Department of Homeland Security says the threat posed by white supremacists is more significant than the immediate danger from foreign terrorists, which is absolutely understandable, because currently our country is in a turmoil based on, for a lack of a better way of putting it, race. Okay? We have one side that wants equality and equitability, and we have the other side who's saying either they're already equal, despite what all of the detailed investigations, all of the studies state that criminal justice actually is not equitable, that for the same crimes, people of color are given harsher sentences on a whole than non-people of color. Despite all of that, the conversation is that racism doesn't exist, that systemic racism doesn't exist. And then there's also the group that is just straight up racist, like the KKK. You could argue groups like Proud Boys and things like that. But we know that the KKK and neo-Nazis and things like that are they are not considered equal opportunity groups. Okay? Foreign terrorist organizations will continue to call for homeland attacks, but probably will remain constrained in their ability to direct such plots over the next year. Russia will probably be the primary covert foreign influence actor and purveyor of disinformation and misinformation in the homeland. Kevin McAleenan, the former DHS acting secretary, ordered the agency last year to start crafting annual homeland threat assessments. The 3 draft documents use varying language to describe the threat posed by white supremacists, but all of them say they pose the most significant threat according to Politico. Lone offenders and small cells of individuals motivated by a diverse array of social, ideological, and personal factors will pose the primary terrorist threat to the United States, as we're seeing currently with the Boogaloo Bois, with Kyle Rittenhouse, with the caravan that entered Portland, with the fact that white supremacist groups are becoming more prominent and more accepted in the, I don't want to say the administration, but the people that support Donald Trump and his administration. Okay? The move to label white supremacists as the most persistent and lethal threat only has teeth if we actually do something about it, and our president currently doesn't like to poke the hornet's nest of his supporters. Here's an important one. Excuse me, I'm gonna shuffle my weight a little bit here. Over 90% of protests this summer were peaceful. So this organization called the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, which is a nonprofit, they did a study and they identified that there were 7,750 protests between May 26th and August 22nd. And they happened in 2,400 different locations. And they found that about 220 of those became violent. So that's where the demonstrators are fighting with police or other protesters. They're burning buildings. They're doing all the things that the administration is claiming is happening throughout the country currently. Okay? But in 93% of these cases analyzed, there was no violence. It's just people walking and marching, and they're doing their, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Okay, so they're doing their chants and they're demonstrating and they're holding their banners, but a lot of times they're filing these applications for protesting, because in a lot of areas you actually have to put out an application stating that we want to do a protest at this time at this location. We expect this many people. Okay, they're saying that 93% of these are non-violent incidents, despite what the president and his administration is claiming, despite the fact that apparently we're moving into anarchy and chaos and the whole country is going to burn down and all the nonsense that we are commonly hearing. Okay? So, in the violent cases, the report said violence was largely confined to specific blocks rather than dispersed throughout the city. Like, for instance, in Portland, it's just in one zone that all the protests are happening, but you can go out and have coffee and in Starbucks and just stay away from those areas, and you won't actually be affected by them. Okay? In this hyper-polarized environment, state forces are taking a more heavy-handed approach to dissent. Non-state actors are becoming more active and assertive, and counter-demonstrators are looking to resolve their political disputes in the streets. Okay? The statement that I just read is their warning that there will be more violence as we head towards the elections. Okay? It's almost guaranteed, because I'm going to say something that is nonpartisan at the moment. I believe if the Democrats win, there will be proponents of Trumplicans that believe that it is a result that is brought through fraud, because the president himself stated that the only way he's going to lose is if the Democrats cheat. And so I believe that they will take to the streets. And likewise, if Donald Trump wins again, organizations that believe that he's a threat to our country are going to mobilize as well. Obviously, there's the third factor, and that's the fact if he's not reelected but then refuses to leave office, we may end up with him attempting a coup. I hope that that does not happen, but it is a possibility. In any case, 93%, that's a lot of protests that were peaceful despite what people want to say. Let's do a time check. Oh, we need to hurry this up, guys. Trump says he gets along with Putin amid international criticism of Russian aggression. So basically, Navalny is poisoned with Novichok. We discussed that in one of our previous episodes. And people have been trying to get Donald Trump to denounce him. And basically what he's stating is, yeah, I'll look into it. But, you know, we need to get along with Russia. But China's doing some bad things. Because it always goes back to deflection. Let's not bite the hand that feeds us. Putin helped him get reelected and is currently trying to help him get reelected again. And I've stated this before, President Putin. I'm not against you. I'm for America. I'm against the puppet that's in office. Okay, so please, I don't need the Novichok. I'm good. Trump to build out permission structure to win back voters. I've talked about this one before too. Okay, not this article, but this concept. So we'll go with 680 News because I don't want to go with the Associated Press. No offense, I just don't dig the pop-ups every time I open up one of their articles. Showcasing Black Americans at the Republican National Convention to allay white voters' fears that President Donald Trump is a racist. Sharing touching stories about the president's concern for the military. Painting Democrat Joe Biden as an unacceptable alternative who threatens the American way of life. It's all part of the Trump campaign's effort to construct a permission structure, a clunky catchphrase for creating an emotional and psychological gateway to help disenchanted voters feel comfortable voting for the president again despite the reservations about him personally. The idea is that you have these, I don't know what the politically correct term for it is, but you have these token people, these people of color or these people of marginalized groups who state, you know, Donald Trump is not what people say he is, okay? And they gain so much support because it allows the people to say, you know what, I'm okay with voting for him because, you know, Candace Owens says that he's good. So you know, and she's black, so that means that she speaks for all the black people, and so I'm good. He's not a racist. He's not a racist. I seen that picture of him next to, you know, all the people that gained the Ellis Island Award. He can't be racist. No, it doesn't matter that it had nothing to do with race that he got the award for. It had to do with real estate. It doesn't matter. He's not a racist, okay? So the permission structure gives yourself permission to vote for him even though you feel shitty about voting for the guy, okay? It normalizes the stuff that he does. You know what? It doesn't matter that he says the things that he does. He's our president. I'm going to end this with a video. It's going to be about 5 minutes long. It's a good video. Maybe I should end it with the actual video and not the picture of the man in the video. That'd be nice, right?
Join Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Erica Hill, Big Bird, and the Sesame
Or we
Street
can watch an ad.
for answers to all your questions
How about that?
returning to school.
Let's
And
watch
Virtual
Sesame
Learning,
Street.
The ABCs of Back to School, a CNN Sesame Street town hall for families.
Yeah!
Next Saturday morning at 10.
I was sad because of how unsurprised I was, and yet surprised at how angry I've been in the last 24 hours since reading this article. Here's the thing, Don. Folks who have served like myself, folks who are in the service right now, we didn't need this article. The troops already know. They heard him come into office and say that the military was in terrible shape until he got there. They've heard him say that they don't fight to win anymore. They've heard what he said about John McCain. They remember the Yemen raid, where he went into Yemen in a dangerous raid, one he ordered over dinner, for the reason of Obama said no to the raid. And then when Navy SEAL Ryan Owens was killed in that raid, what did President Trump say? He said the generals lost him. They remember when he told a widow that her husband knew what he was getting into. The day he took us to war with Iran for a full day and to the brink of full war, solely so he could appear tough. The traumatic brain injuries that occurred as a result of rocket attacks during that one day of a war that he called headaches. The fact that Vladimir Putin currently has a price on the head of our soldiers and he doesn't stand up to him. The fact that he uses soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen and coasties as props in parades and as captive audiences for overtly political speeches.
So
and as you just mentioned, one that's deeply personal to me, he has said that combat veterans who are not stricken with post-traumatic stress are strong, and that those like myself who are stricken with post-traumatic stress, they simply can't handle it. And I'll tell you the difference between these two people, and that is that when I made my announcement that I was taking a step off the stage for a while to deal with post-traumatic stress, Vice President Biden didn't just make a public statement calling that brave. He called me that day. He texted me that day. He checked up on me. This isn't about any of the things I just mentioned, this indictment on President Trump. At the end of the day, the reason that he will lose the vote of military families and current military members is because we know a leader when we see one, and he is not it.
Can you go deeper for...
Okay, so we're not going to go deeper on that. If you want to look at that later, you're more than welcome to. That's through CNN. You can get to that through the Ground News app. Something that I'm noticing a little bit is that the military is over time coming out and showing their opinion on things. I've seen that there's a poll stating about 40% of the military does not. I'm sorry. Let me restate that. About 40% of the military seems to be supporting Donald Trump as opposed to 60% that don't. Okay? I really hope so. I can see that this man is not a leader. A leader does not drag his fellow Americans across the coals through insults. Go back to where you came from. Shifty shift. What did he call Hillary? What did he call Elizabeth Warren? A leader does not do those things. A leader brings the people up around them, okay? So a good leader does not tout themselves all the time and say how good they are. A good leader talks about the people that got them to where they are and helps to bring them up, because that inspires loyalty. That inspires hope. That says, you know what? He could be taking credit for this, but he's giving me credit for this, and so I really respect this man. We do not see that. Everything is either he's done the best ever, or it's not his fault. He doesn't know that guy. Okay? So as Jason Kander, former U.S. Army captain, stated, the military knows when they see a leader, and Donald Trump is not it. In any case, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm at WIKWEKO on Twitter. IndigPatriot.com. If you like, please share. I appreciate it. I'm trying new things. Thank you. 30 minutes.